Greetings and welcome back to another episode of the Daily Run, and today we're playing as Cain. Cain is already a very intriguing character in terms of his strat distributions, and also the fact that he has kinda unlimited keys for golden chests. And when you pick up an item that you're not really sure what it does, data miner, and the first time I used it, what I thought it did is that it gave you a random stat redistribution, so it gave you a stat upgrade and somewhere a stat downgrade, to kind of make it a bit more balanced, and give you the fruitcake effect for one room. And at first I thought, that seems quite underpowered, but at least it's a fruitcake effect, and fruitcake effects can be quite useful against bosses because you can get holy light shots, you can get some pennies maybe from the head of the keeper, there's also the god head shots and just things like that. It helps to kind of kill enemies and just deal with them because it gives you some AoE effects, but also some just stat upgrades or damage effects. And I just entered the Ragman room. I thought, I'm just gonna use it, I'm gonna be able to kill him, and apparently another thing that it does is rotate every sprite by 90 degrees, which is very odd, it's a very unique effect, and I really like it for that, but it's just unusable in my opinion. In the room with Ragman, it wasn't that noticeable because there were no any other sprites, and just what it did is just rotated the Ragman sprite by its axis. But I don't know if this is like a global effect or not, but I think it also rotates the whole room by 90 degrees, and you can see it here. And the weird thing about this is that the positions of the actual grids and pots and things like that aren't changed, which means that if you run into it, it might seem like you're stuck where you're not stuck. Essentially, what seems to be there isn't there, it's in a different position. And for that reason, it's a very disorienting item to use. And in fact, it was so disorienting the first time I used it a few times here, and I decided to stop using it. It just threw me off so bad, and I would just end up taking damage later on. The fact that the stats also get redistributed because I had a lower shot speed wasn't a good thing at all, because you're just not used to it, and when you kind of get confused by the item, you just end up taking damage that you usually wouldn't take. And it was quite a surreal experience. I don't think I've ever experienced this level of confusion in Isaac. Even if there was something like a pill which maybe change your controls so up was down and down was up, I don't think it would be this bad. And I don't know really what it was that threw me off so badly, but it did, and for that reason I probably won't use this item anytime soon again because it just doesn't seem that good to me. And maybe one thing that it can be used for is if you have a very high amount of one stat and a low amount of the other stat. So let's say that we have a bunch of luck for some reason, we found a bunch of lucky pennies and our damage is quite low. Maybe if there's enough battery charges, what you can do is increase your damage, or just eventually your damage will be higher and your luck will be lower, and that's how your stats get redistributed. And in that sense, maybe that would be a good item, that would be a good use of the item. But then again, we already have the dice, the 8 I believe, which rerolls your stats, and that has that effect in some way, but I'm not really sure. But I believe there's a very niche usage for this item, and that in some situations it can be useful, but I just don't see it yet. But besides that, this run was actually going pretty strong, weak. It's hard to determine, because one thing that really screwed us over here is that our speed is just very low. You can see that we started out with 1.3, which is very above average, and the fact that Cain starts with low range kind of offsets for the fact that he has a high speed, because the shots which you fire, their range doesn't only come from your range stat, it also comes from the shot speed stat and also from your speed stat, because depending on your velocity, the higher the velocity or the faster you're moving, when you shoot the tear, the larger range on that tear will be. So with Cain, even though your range is actually lower because you travel faster, you can kind of compensate for that. But because we rolled with the data miner a few times, our shot speed is bad and our speed is bad, which means that we feel the effects of having low range, and it's not a fun situation. Whenever you have low range, I believe that's one of the most frustrating runs, especially if you don't have the DPS to kind of back it up. And for that reason, I would never recommend picking up Eve's Mascara. What it does to your stats is just abysmal. And I know Eve's Mascara has nothing to do with this particular daily, but it's just a PSA. If you're playing a run today and you see Eve's Mascara and if you try to pick it up, don't, because it's a bad idea. So I did my daily duty of the day. I was a good Samaritan. So let's get out with the daily. But besides the stats getting redistributed, which was quite unfortunate, at least we got some damage. And having high damage and having the milk means that at least our DPS is not that bad. It was still quite tedious to kill enemies, but at least it didn't take like ages, and we were actually able to get through rooms quite effectively. The fact that we got a nail earlier on allowed us to get a bunch of spirit hearts as well, because we have a bunch of coins, and thankfully my determines to get the ivy bag or the blood bag paid off, because I really did trade a lot of health away to the blood machines, the blood donation machines, And I got the Ivy bag, and obviously the Ivy bag is not only good for coins, but it's also good for avoiding damage. So whenever an enemy would hit you, you can just use the Ivy bag to damage yourself intentionally. You don't lose any points, because if you damage yourself with the Ivy bag, your damage stays the same, and the enemy doesn't hit you, which is just a good overall, because usually what ends up happening, you get more coins, which are worth more points than the health you're actually trading away to avoid getting damaged. So Ivy bag is obviously a great item, but there's that one thing that is, again, quite frustrating in Isaac, and it's whenever you have an abundance of something and it just doesn't get it. And in this case, we had like a lot of coins. We also had a lot of keys, at least in the terms of having the lockpick means that we can open up old golden chests for free. But for some reason, the golden chest just didn't come. Every single shop contained greed, at least the ones I was into. The only one that didn't was, I believe, this floor's. And this floor had a reroll machine in it. And the reroll machine in shops is something that's new to Afterbirth Plus. And it's quite a good addition in my opinion, because it doesn't only reset the items that are already there, so it doesn't just reroll them, but it also restocks them. So if you buy something, you can then actually donate money or use a bump to reroll and restock the shop to get new stuff. And in this case, I actually did use that to the great effect. Sadly, it didn't really pay off for us. I did donate like 99 cents and spend it on just buying various items. You can see that I bought the pillar, I believe it's the pillar, the item that takes your health away and you gain a cube of meat for it, and also some very minor damage up. And we did get a level 3 cube of meat, and I decided to do that more out of vanity than actual choice. It would be much better for us to stick with the Ivy bag in my opinion, but I decided to take Yarrow Rune, the Blank Card and Degas, because that at least allows us to get some health back, but also it's very good if we found a Yarrow Rune, because that way we can break the game later on. Sadly, the Yarrow Rune didn't come, so like I said, it would probably be better to stick with health plus the Ivy bag, because that would just give us more points overall, and like I said before, we would be able to avoid the damage. The cube of meat, the meat boy here, he's not a very good familiar, or rather, I find that a lot of familiars which have auto-pathing just aren't very reliable to use, and I don't know if this is just a new thing, but I do feel like they were more useful in the past, and I don't know if the past refers to me in playing the Wrath of the Lamb, or if it's just Afterbirth or maybe Rebirth, but I really did feel like their pathing was much better. In this case, if you see Meat Boy, most often than not, he just ends up doing nothing. And even when he gets in close and personal, he just doesn't do that much damage. When it actually came to level 4, he seemed to be just a bit more aggressive and a bit smarter, but at level 3, he seems completely useless to me, and he just doesn't seem to actually do anything, which is a shame, because I really like the idea of having multiple cube of meats, because essentially what you're doing is trading 3 boss items away to get him, so I really feel like he should be a bit more useful, do a bit more damage. And even Bumbo, which is supposed to be one of those smart familiars, and obviously when he sticks to an enemy like Hush, he's not letting go, and that's one of the great things about Bumbo, and that's why we all love him, but his pathing in room-to-room basis is quite bad, and it just isn't there where we probably would want it to be. Nevertheless, we did get Brimstone thankfully in one of the devil deals. Sadly, it was just before boss rush, and I did miss boss rush, which was quite unfortunate, but then again, this was quite a slow run in both terms of not having enough DPS and because we're slow, but it did pick up after that. After we got Brimstone, we got a damage up, and thankfully we found Tammy's head. And again, I know what you're saying, you should have stuck with a Blank Card, because with Brimstone you already have enough damage to deal with rooms, and there's always a chance that you find a Yarrow Rune on the Dark Room, and that would allow you to duplicate things. But honestly, just because the run was already quite tedious is a good way to put it, I decided to take Tammy's head just to be a little bit overpowered, because again, this is not a combo that you see that often, so the ability to just walk into the rooms, press the spacebar and just melt everything is a unique feeling that I feel we should all experience a bit more often. And again, if you don't want to play this run, I would encourage you to do so, at least to some degree, because I believe it was a fun one. I believe there's a secret lying there that I just didn't find, and there is a good run here. And if you want to find it out, you can go play, and you can find the seat in the description or at the end of this video. We're at the lamp here, and the lamp isn't too big of a deal with Brimstone. In general, the lamp is not that big of a deal. He does have a lot of HP, but his attacks are quite predictable. Sometimes he'll teleport around or dash around, that's quite annoying, but overall you can dodge him quite reliably, and that concludes the run, at least to some degree. We did finish in a pretty comfortable spot. Our points obviously weren't very high because we just got hit a bunch, we didn't miss boss rush. Thankfully, I got the marathon achievement, and the reason I think why I didn't get it yesterday is because I have 2 different save files. One is for modding, one is just from Rebirth, Afterbirth, and then one that is new. And I play dailies on different saves apparently. And I think you have to get 5 dailies on the same day, or you have to win 5 dailies in a row on the same save to actually unlock it. So I think I'll have to do the marathon achievement again in one of my other saves, so you might see that pop up in the future. But for now, we did unlock it, which is obviously great. Our score was 46th, which is actually a very good rank. I didn't think that we would be this good, but finding the sacrifice room probably aided that, at least to some degree. And we did finish in a very comfortable spot, and I'm glad that we did, because like I said before, this daily was quite tedious, so the fact we found that combo at the end did make it just a bit more enjoyable. I hope you enjoyed this one, guys, and I hope to see you next time.